morning, everyone. Thanks. Thank you very much to the organisers for inviting me to be able to be part of this this session. I'll be talking to you about the hydrogen business models. This will be as part of this second deep dive session, and driving the commercialisation and bankability of the UK hydrogen economy. My name is Bret. I'm the head of policy and analysis at Hydrogen UK. I'm a chemical engineer by background, so apologies if my knowledge of project finance is not quite up to speed for this room, but we'll get through. So it's just a bit about Hydrogen UK. We are the leading trade association representing organisations working in hydrogen here in the UK. We cover the whole value stream. We've got 10 working groups looking at everything from production through infrastructure and end use. And we're working with DESNZ on a couple of important things around the supply chain. We're going to set up a supply chain strategy for the UK, and we co-host an annual investor forum. So stay tuned for more details about that. We're looking to get dates booked in for that very soon. As I said, leading association, we've got 80 plus members. Okay, so I've got to do the juggling act. Okay, so as you'll see, you'll recognise a significant number of our members up there, but also hopefully some that you don't. Like I say, we're representing everyone from the smallest to the largest. Apologies, you've already seen this. Someone's already stolen some of my thunder, but to understand how the business models are going to be used, I wanted to take a step back and say, where are we now and where are we trying to get to? So government published their hydrogen strategy back in 2021. And with it, this helpful little roadmap of how we might get to those production ambitions. Originally, we were stated to aim for 5 gigawatts of production capacity by 2030. But since in the intervening time, obviously what's happened in Ukraine, everyone's doubled down on energy security, and that production ambition was doubled to 10 gigawatts. And notionally, at least 5 gigawatts of that is to come from electrolytic production sources, so those powered by renewable or nuclear electricity, and the remaining balance will come from CCUS enabled, so that production from fossil fuels with the carbon capture and storage element. And as highlighted by a colleague at DESNZ and by Richard, there's a huge number of uses that could be deployed by 2030. And to be able to get there, we need a huge array of project types to deliver. So a good study that was put out by the Carbon Trust very recently identified some archetypal projects, and we're seeing that very clearly in the project database that we're tracking. Electrolytic projects will start small necessarily while we wait for OEM manufacturing capacities to increase and experience to be developed. But the carbon capture and storage projects lend themselves to being far larger, starting in the hundreds of megawatt scale, and capitalising on the economies of scale of being deployed in industrial clusters. Wrong button, that's why we're not moving. Right, now we've already highlighted the market for low carbon hydrogen is practically non-existent at the moment, and the economics on their own don't stand up, especially when we've got relatively cheap, abundant natural gas. So the UK government has put forward the hydrogen production business model as a revenue support scheme to stimulate the deployment of hydrogen within the UK economy. It's a familiar model. It worked really well in the low carbon electricity generation, in seeing not only the costs of offshore wind come down, but also the UK becoming a world leader in the deployment. Something that didn't happen was the development of the local supply chain to be able to deliver it domestically. We'll touch on that a little bit soon. But the key aspects is that the production business model gives producers a top-up between a subsidy between a strike price that's agreed before at the contract outset, and between a differential reference price, which is normally set at the natural gas price, which is usually what hydrogen will be displacing. So as I said, it's a very similar two-way CFD model that's been used in the low carbon electricity generation sector. It's intended to provide that confidence to investors to invest early. But fundamentally, there's some big differences between the hydrogen economy and the low carbon electricity in the fact that at the moment there is no established market. We've got to create that as we go, and we don't have the infrastructure to be moving the molecules from where they could be created to where they could be used. And just to give the context, so the energy bill, which is going through Parliament at the moment, is the primary legislation that is needed to enact the powers for government to sign contracts for the business models. It comes through via the low carbon hydrogen agreement. I'll get some more on the terms of that fairly soon. But as Richard pointed out, one of the key add-ons is the low carbon hydrogen standard. For any producer to be able to claim any subsidy from the government, it has to be proven that it is truly low carbon. And the UK has a very stringent limit. It's one of the leading in the world to prove that. And as within Hydrogen UK, we're putting out a report next week, I think it is, to show that even the CCS-enabled projects within the UK can very easily meet that standard. Okay, it would be remiss of me as a representative of a trade association to say that the low carbon hydrogen agreement, the LCHA, is great, but still have some tweaks that we'd like to see in there to help with the bankability of projects. The allocation of risk, especially across for blue hydrogen production, needs some work. We need for hydrogen producers to be able to focus on what they do best, and that's producing hydrogen. There needs to be sufficient volume support in the event that the demand falls off to protect returns. There are some issues with the data grandfathering, just to be able to protect producers from risks upstream that are wholly outside of their control. And also, at the moment, there is an exclusion on selling volumes to risk-taking intermediaries, and we know that that's an important piece for developing a liquid market. And Richard touched on some of the points earlier. There's some wider policy pieces that are still being developed that the government has committed to, and they will surely help to influence the confidence in the demand levels going forward. So transport and storage is a key aspect for being able to allow those electrolytic projects to be able to increase in capacity and connect up the clusters so we can build a resilient network. A decision on blending. Different schools of thought of what the purpose of blending is, but what it is key for at the moment is being able to is helping with offtake risk for those first mover electrolytic projects, and that's a key enabler. And the elephant in everybody's room is the role in domestic heat. So, government has got two main funding streams for producers to be able to access revenue support through the business models. On the electrolytic side, we have the hydrogen allocation rounds. First round kicked off last year, in fact, and government's looking to award contracts of up to 250 megawatts. Shortlisted projects are down to 17 at the moment, and they're hoping to announce and award contracts before the end of this year. The second round is due to launch very soon after that, and simply have contracts awarded late 2024 or early 2025, up to 750 megawatts. From that point, looking to go into an annual allocation round similar to what was done for offshore wind, up to about a gigawatt of capacity each year. That's still to be confirmed, but the idea is that will allow government to hit its ambition of 5 gigawatts of electrolytic capacity by 2030. The other thing to note around the allocation rounds from HAR3 onwards is they're looking to move to a more competitive price allocation, but that's being consulted on at the moment to how that will be designed. And on the CCS-enabled side, it's done through the cluster sequencing process. There are two blue production projects that are going through track 1 negotiations at the moment, and then track 1 expansion and track 2 are being designed by government as we speak. Wrong way. So the incentive for these business models has created quite a mature pipeline of projects in the UK. The question now is, are they bankable using the business models that are on the table? So again, I apologize, project finance is not my forte, but I just want to touch some of the basics and how they might apply to hydrogen projects here in the UK. Costs are a significant part of the negotiations. Magnitude is one thing, but certainty is another. We've never done it at this scale before, so there's a huge amount of uncertainty in the costs. We're competing with other green technologies for common aspects of the supply chain. There are certain studies that show that in terms of jobs and skills, that actually 80% of skills are common across all of the green technologies. So there's a huge pull from other sectors, and inflation behind that. Revenue potential, so it's having certainty around the revenue streams. Unfortunately for hydrogen, it could be used in so many applications that there are a number of, there are multiple revenue streams available. So either directly through selling of the product for fuel or for support services to the power sector. But obviously there are other valuable byproducts such as oxygen and solid carbon for some of the novel technologies that are coming through. The wider benefits that come with using hydrogen. So obviously we're looking at a decarbonised energy system in future, but there are certainly other positive aspects that come from it. Jobs and GVA, we're putting out, we've done a recast of our economic impact assessment, and we're looking at the hydrogen economy out to 2030 could support 12,000 jobs every year between now and then, with a GVA impact, I think, cumulative of about 30 billion. So I said there's certainly a lot to be gained, and anchoring a domestic supply chain will only improve that. And then obviously we've got the element of risk, and we'll touch more on that next. As Richard said, there are the number of instruments available to help shore up demand for hydrogen. So some of the key ones that are out there in the world at the moment. You can stimulate demand by mandating quotas, like the EU has done through the RED II directives and the RED III directive, which is coming soon. You have carbon pricing schemes, and they're either for compliance or voluntary schemes. Carbon markets, carbon contracts for difference is being rolled out in Germany at the moment. America's doing it their way with subsidies and tax incentives, but also general support by government. Government coming out and making clear commitments to the role that hydrogen will play, will do wonders for confidence. That again. So, a recent study or a recent survey that was put out by the Boston Consulting Group looked at what the investment community see as the key risks for deploying hydrogen projects. What I want you to do is have a quick look at that list of risks. I'm sure they're all they're all very familiar to you. We'll come back to them at the end as part of the discussion. But what the suggestion in terms of what banks are looking to do to be able to mitigate those risks is long-term offtake agreements. The business models is looking to have a 15-year contract. So they're similar there, and using mature technologies. As Richard said, there are certain use cases for hydrogen which are readily available now, rather than needing further innovation. Clear regulations and standards and stable policy certainly helps, and being able to sell into established markets to mitigate those merchant risks. So the business models and the funding round designs are looking to mitigate a lot of those risks, but obviously there's more to be done. But it's not all. Oops, sorry, there we go. I say, first of all, we'll come back to this, but do you agree with that list and the priorities? But we can touch on that in the discussion in a little moment. But it's not all risk. There's plenty of upsides to be had. There's a lot of text on here. I won't go to it, but the DESNZ's investor roadmap has pointed out to 11 billion of investment that's needed between now and 2030 to reach those ambitions. As Hydrogen UK, we've done our own analysis, and we think that's underselling it. We think it's closer to 20 billion that's needed. The investor roadmap only focuses on production and infrastructure. It doesn't look at the end use cases. So like I say, there's a huge amount of investment that's needed, and the economics are going to improve significantly as we start deploying and as we see those cost curves come down. So there's like I said, an important role for building relationships early between the investment community and an industry to achieve that. Okay, that brings me to the end of my part. But just to help steer the discussions, I want you to think about that list of risks that I showed there. You know more about them than I. But what do we think are the top 3 actions that can help improve the bankability of these first of a kind projects, either by government, developers, investors, or together?